Why does anyone need a preamp? Don't ask that question of the person getting ready to buy this preamp. All right, the question comes from Richard in Lakeland, Florida. And Richard writes, please, please, please explain a simple but burning question that I've had for 40 years. Why do I or anyone else need a preamp? In other words, why can't whatever functionality the preamp performs just be built right into the main amp and be done with it? Wouldn't it be more rational to do it all in the same space, on the same circuit, like a BHK becomes a one-stop shop for sound? Is this so far-fetched? I understand if the question doesn't rise to the level of a YouTube response. However, I'd really love to know the reason why anyone needs a preamp. Oh my goodness, yes, Richard, it rises to the level of a YouTube response. I think it's actually a really good question. Nobody needs a preamp. This preamp, this beautiful vacuum tube BHK preamp with its knob and its things and on the back all this cool stuff, nobody needs it. Nobody. But we need some way to control the input selection and the volume of our signal sources. So we know what a preamp does. Well, I just described it, right? A preamp is essentially a way to select the inputs that you want to listen to and control their volume. And that's basically what it does. So an integrated amplifier is exactly what you are talking about. An integrated amplifier is a power amplifier with a preamp built in. A receiver is an integrated amplifier with a tuner built in, or today, some of them have tuners, but most of them have surround sound processors. So a receiver used to be a radio, a preamp, and a power amp. Well, for years, we didn't have separate preamps. We had console stereos where the knob turned it up and down. You didn't know how it worked. And then along came, I don't know who was responsible for separates. I mean, way back in the days of Sidney Harmon and Bernard Carden, Harman-Kardon guys, the Bill Johnsons of audio research. I mean, all of us back then in the early days of stereo, when I got started in the early 70s, separates were there because it allowed us, by separating components out of the integrated units, to focus our attentions on specific areas. So it's really a discussion about why separates, okay? When you look back to 1974, when Stan Warren and I started PS Audio, we made a separate phono preamplifier. So not only was this a separate part of what used to be then a preamplifier, because back then all preamplifiers had phono stages built into them, because all we had was turntables. There was no such thing in 1974 of the compact disc. We had, I don't even think we had cassette players back then. No, there was reel-to-reel and turntables. I think that was about it. And so any preamplifier you bought had a phono stage and a line stage and a volume control between the two. And you also had auxiliary inputs, so you could then take a separate tuner, there we go with separates again, that you could plug in and use it. So Stan and I took that. We were one of the very first people, one of the very few people to take apart the preamp even more, and we lifted the phono stage out of the preamp and made a separate box. That's how we started our company. Why? Because we could make a better phono preamplifier than what most people had inside of their preamps. And why a preamp? Because back then, and as of now, we can put all of our efforts into one box. So just look at this thing. So this is, you can see here. Now this is an expensive preamp, right? This is a BHK preamp. Big ass transformer, all this, look at all these heat sinks on here. These are all for the MOSFET buffers, the vacuum tubes, where the vacuum, well, there's holes for vacuum tubes. The headphone, all the inputs. I mean, this is jam-packed, filled, right? Why? Why is that filled? And even a better question, what if I took all of that stuff and dumped it into a BHK power? Is there a BHK? No, there's not. Well, a BHK amplifier, you know, stands about that tall. Well, it's packed too. So if you wanted to take all of this stuff and put it into a BHK amplifier, you'd have to grow it by, well, this much. And there would be physical problems and all of that. So we probably wouldn't do that. Why? A couple of reasons. First, once you have a power amplifier, you don't need a whole lot more. You need input switching, and you need a pot, and you need the ability to control the gain easily. And you can add that to a power amplifier without going through all of this. And you can even use the power supply of the power amplifier to drive it. Well, as soon as you do that, you're starting to compromise the performance. If I share a power supply, I by necessity compromise it. Separate power supplies sound better than shared power supplies. And the natural inclination for designers and manufacturers is to make it easy. I've got I got this box, I got a power supply, I'm going to just use all of my assets together. Why wouldn't I? Well, you wouldn't, because if you're really interested in performance, you'd have separates. Now, that's the primary reason why people have preamps. So technically, we don't need a preamp because we can build it into a power amplifier. And people do, and they're called integrated amplifiers. But with few exceptions, integrated amplifiers aren't as good as separates. And that's the reason why. Because this whole box of stuff, we didn't put this in for fun. We put it in over years and years of work and research to figure out how to make this thing the best preamplifier we know how to make. Unless I cloned this entire circuit, just the whole box, stuck it inside of another box, I could not guarantee, in fact, I can guarantee that I can't guarantee the same sound quality that you would have. Could it be done? Yes. That's why it isn't done, because the separate chassis, the separate power supply, all of that contributes to its performance level that you won't get if you integrate them into one box. I hope your burning question got answered. Thanks for asking it, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.